Hey, it's Dorleen, and today I'm going to be playing with some watercolor pencils and a water brush. I stamped the image using archival ink, and I let it sit for just a little bit as I'm putting down the washi onto the clipboard and also showing off my cup that I use to hold my watercolor pencils. And I also keep a couple of water brushes in there so I always know where to find them. So I'm just going through. I am not somebody who anybody would ever say, "Ooh, you have to watch her. She colors fantastically," because that is not me. But I just color to how I think it should be. I start off really light because I figured it's easier to start light than start dark, and spreading the watercolor pencil ink just throughout the image. I am going to add some shading with a little bit darker, and those are in any area that I feel like should be a little darker, like those crease areas that are already determined by the stamp. And I just rub those through and just keep on adding color until I get to a point where I'm happy with it. Now, the one thing with watercoloring is when they start to dry, it lightens up, and that's because the paper is absorbing the color. So as I'm working on different areas, you'll see me go back and add more color because I want it darker, or sometimes not, depending on of course the amount of color that's on there. But I'm doing the same thing with basically every section. So with the pink, I'm starting off very light, and I'm just spreading the colors, and then I'll start working on the pink, and I'll add more darker where the creases are, where the shadows are, that, like I mentioned before, that are already determined by the stamp, which really does help a lot when you're like me and you are not a professional colorist. But it helps with the different colors because any kind of shading just brings the images to life, which is so fun when you're coloring with whatever your medium, whether it's watercolor paints, pencils, markers, or even alcohol markers. But the one thing I'm doing, and you'll see me in a minute when I'm working on her hair, is I use different shades of brown. No rhyme or reason. I'm just kind of here, there, everywhere. But some, you see me, I did it very lightly, and I'll use the same pencil and then maybe put a little bit heavier, be a little heavier handed, and make it a little bit darker in some areas. And then I even added a darker brown to add even more darker. But just like I mentioned before, the different shades, the different shades, the heavier, colors, it just adds something. It makes it a little bit more interesting, not so flat, just gives it some dimension. And I think you'll agree, especially when you see the end, the final project, you can tell that, with those different shades or shadows, it just looks so pretty. One thing I'm doing, and when you're playing with watercolor, the nice thing is if you do mess up, you can just clear off your brush and then remove color. And when I'm working on her skin tone, you'll see that the first thing I did is I put some the coloring on her arm, and it just looks really dark. So I brush off the color, and then you'll soon see I brushed it off, and now I'm just using plain water, and I'm removing some of that color so that it's not so dark. And so now I know next time, add the color, clean it off a little bit on my pad, and then go back in and add more skin tone. So I do that here too with the black. I didn't want it to be a pitch black. I wanted it to be a gray, which is basically just watering down or diluting that black pencil. I think I did that with the socks too. And here I'm just using the tip of the pencil with the water brush and just flicking it. And that's what's adding the little splatter, which is a lot of fun. And I didn't want big ones. I just wanted little ones. So that's a lot of fun. Again, as the images are drying, I will go back and add color as needed or as I feel needed until I get to a point where I'm happy with how it looks with the different, shadows and shades and all that kind of fun stuff. So once I'm done, which I think I'm done here, I'll put that aside and let it dry. And what I do also is I put one of my bigger acrylic blocks and make sure to keep it flat so there won't be any buckling. So right now I'm just preparing the card base or card front. And I have these scraps, which I love this paper, and I thought the blue and the pinks just coordinated perfectly. And I end up using this cover sheet for the card because it has a little bit of every color in that pack. This is just the final pieces that I have. I just really love those papers. And so I think it just coordinates perfectly. Now this image is pretty tall, and this is just a standard, the height for this card is 5.5 inches. So I had to cut down a lot on the image because I wanted her to fit on there with a little bit of extra room that you would see more of the pattern paper. I did decide to cut that down to 3 inches instead of 4 inches so that I can see it, the pattern paper over there on that left side. I think that's really cute. I think I trimmed that down a little bit more too, but maybe I do that later. So when I'm putting the sentiment on, I decided to use my Misty because I wanted to make sure that the image is going to be a really dark image. So I ended up using or stamping the sentiment 3 times in black ink, and that gave it the darkness, the intensity that I really wanted. That's so nice about the Misty is that it stamps in the exact same spot. So you don't have to worry about guessing on where the positioning of that stamp is. So I highly recommend this product if you haven't bought one by now. I know they've been around for quite a while, or any of these kind of stamping platforms. So there it is. I'm kind of like, looking at it again, and that's when I decide, no, I want to trim it down a little bit more because, again, I want to see as much of that pattern paper as I can, but I don't want to chop into the image. I really thought about matting it with black paper, but that just would have been too much. And right now I realize, well, she looks a little flat against there. So I'm using that really light blue and I'm putting like a shadow around her. So that really makes a big difference, even though you could barely see it. So for all the colors of the watercolor pencils, and all the information of this card will be on my blog. So please look at the box below, and I'll have a direct blog post link, and also a link to my blog home page. But go there, please, for more information. I did decide to ink the edges in place, or in lieu of doing a black matte, and then I just used liquid adhesive to glue it all down, centered it over on that right side, and then glued it into the pink side. I do know, you probably already noticed, there is a void over on that left-hand side on the white paper, but I do end up using some stickles to just add some little dots here and there. I don't show you because I do it afterwards, but you'll see it when I reveal the card at the end. So I hope you like this video. And if you do, please give me a thumbs up. Make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. I do post at least 2 videos a week. At least one will be scrapbooking, and then the other will be whatever it is I'm working on. So I hope you decide to check it out. Thanks. Bye.